The cold wind of Colony 9 whispered through the metal walls of Daniel's small house. The evening sky was dark, painted in shades of deep blue and gray. Daniel sat by the little table with his 10-year-old daughter Emma. It was supposed to be a special night, his birthday, but birthdays on a faraway colony never felt special. There were no friends, no neighbors dropping by, no laughter. Just Daniel, Emma, and a flickering candle trying to stay alive in the draft. Emma had made dinner, just soup and a few pieces of bread. She had worked so hard, her little hands messy with flour. When Daniel smiled at her, she smiled back shyly. "I wanted to make it special, Daddy," she said. And from behind her back, she brought out a tiny box. Daniel opened it and found a small wooden star inside. It was uneven, carved by hand and perfect in every way. "I made it from the old tree near the station," Emma said proudly. "It's your birthday star." Daniel laughed softly, holding it close to his heart. He hadn't received a gift like that since his wife passed away years ago. He wanted to say something, but his throat felt tight. He just hugged Emma instead, whispering, "Thank you, sweetheart." The candlelight danced across the table, warming the small room. Daniel looked at the food, the soft glow, the peace. For the first time in a long while, he felt a little happy, but happiness never lasted long on Colony 9. Outside, thunder rolled across the horizon, though there were no clouds. Then, the ground shook slightly, and Emma gasped. The sound came again. Deep, heavy and distant, like something falling from the sky. Daniel stood up, walked to the window and looked out into the night. The forest in the distance glowed faint green, like a dying star. "Daddy, what is that?" Emma whispered, clutching his sleeve. Daniel's heart began to race. It wasn't lightning, it wasn't any storm, it was a crash, a ship maybe, and that meant danger, or someone in need. He turned back toward the table. The candle flickered, and the little wooden star shone faintly in his palm. He looked at Emma, her wide eyes full of fear. He knew what she was thinking. He had promised her last year that he wouldn't go out during emergencies. He had promised to keep her safe, to stay home. But Daniel wasn't the kind of man who could ignore someone in trouble. He had been a rescue worker before the wars, before everything changed. He walked to the cabinet and pulled out his old jacket. "Daddy, don't go, please," Emma said, her voice breaking. "It's just one night, it's your birthday." Daniel knelt down beside her, holding her hands. "I know, sweetheart, but someone might be hurt out there," he said softly. Emma's eyes filled with tears. "What if they don't come back?" she whispered. Daniel smiled weakly, trying to hide his own fear. "I always come back, remember?" He placed the wooden star in her hand. "Keep it safe for me," he said, "and keep the candle burning." He opened the door. The wind howled, carrying sand and dust through the air. The colony lights blinked far away. Dim and broken, Daniel stepped out into the cold darkness. The forest waited, silent and strange. He walked quickly through the narrow streets. Every house was quiet, everyone inside pretending not to hear the alarm. But Daniel could hear it clearly. A distant siren from the watchtower. "Unidentified crash detected Sector 3, the mechanical voice repeated again and again. His boots splashed through puddles of glowing mud. His breath turned to white mist in front of him. He followed the green light in the sky, and with each step, the air grew heavier, filled with the smell of burnt metal. When he finally reached the edge of the forest, the sight froze him in place. A small craft had torn through the trees, leaving smoke and strange blue sparks. The ground hissed like it was alive. Daniel covered his mouth. It wasn't a human ship. The markings were nothing like he'd ever seen. Symbols glowed faintly along its broken hull, and from inside, he heard something. Not mechanical, not human. It was a soft cry, a sound like pain and fear mixed together. Daniel's heart pounded. He took a slow step forward, his flashlight trembling in his hand. The light touched the broken door of the craft. Melted, twisted. Inside the darkness, something moved. He leaned closer. "Hello?" he whispered. No answer, just another small, weak cry. He climbed inside the wreck. The air was warm and thick, filled with glowing dust. And then he saw her. A figure lying near the back. Not human, not machine. Something else entirely. Her skin shimmered like silver under the light. She was holding something close to her chest. Something small, wrapped in fabric. Her eyes opened slightly when she saw him. And for a moment, Daniel forgot how to breathe. She whispered one word in a trembling voice, a word he didn't understand. But he knew one thing. She was not here to hurt anyone. She was afraid, desperate, and she needed help. Daniel looked back toward the colony lights in the distance. He thought of Emma waiting with the candle and the wooden star. He should go home. He should report this. But something deep inside told him he couldn't leave her here. Not like this. Not tonight. As the wind blew through the trees, Daniel made his choice. He took off his jacket and gently covered the alien woman. "Don't worry," he said quietly. "I've got you." Behind him, the ship hissed one last time and fell silent. In the darkness, the alien mother's eyes glowed faintly, and the small bundle in her arms moved and cried softly, like a baby. Hook ending. Daniel froze. She wasn't alone. She was a mother. Daniel carried the strange woman carefully through the forest. The air was cold, the ground wet from acid rain. Each step felt heavier than the last. He could hear the distant hum of colony patrol drones searching the skies. Their red lights moved slowly like watchful eyes. He had to stay low, had to stay quiet. The woman in his arms was trembling, whispering words he didn't understand. The small bundle she held against her chest moved again. Daniel looked down. It was tiny. Wrapped in soft blue fabric, a faint cry came from inside, soft and weak. A baby, he realized, shocked, an alien mother, alone and hurt. His heart ached at the thought. He didn't even know how to help her. But he knew he couldn't leave her to die. He finally reached the edge of the colony. The scanners on the towers flashed, detecting movement. Daniel waited until the drones flew past before running toward the back of his home. He used his old security code to open the door quietly. Inside, the warmth of the small house hit him like a wave. Emma stood by the table, the candle still burning just like he asked. Her eyes widened the moment she saw him. "Daddy!" she gasped, then froze. Because behind him, the alien woman stumbled in, her skin glowing faint silver in the light. Emma stepped back, fear and curiosity mixing in her face. "Who is she?" she whispered. Daniel closed the door quickly and locked it. "She's hurt, Emma," he said, catching his breath. "She needs help, and we can't let anyone see her." The alien mother looked weak. She was bleeding. Not red, but a faint blue color that shimmered like light. Daniel helped her sit on the floor. Her eyes met his for a brief second, full of confusion and pain. "Child? Safe?" she whispered, her voice soft and musical. Daniel nodded quickly. "Yes, safe, I promise." He pulled out the first aid kit. Emma stood behind him, watching silently. Her small hands clutched the wooden star he had left her. Daniel cleaned the alien's wounds as best he could. Her skin felt strange, cool and smooth like glass. When the antiseptic touched her arm, she hissed softly, but didn't move away. The baby cried again. Emma took a small step forward. "Can I see the baby?" she asked in a whisper. Daniel hesitated, but the alien mother nodded slowly. Emma knelt beside her and peeked under the cloth. Inside was a tiny creature with bright green eyes and soft silver skin. It looked fragile. Scared and beautiful, Emma smiled gently. "Hi, little one," she whispered. The baby made a small sound, almost like laughter. The alien woman stared at Emma. Her expression softened for the first time. She touched her chest and said, "Lyra." Daniel blinked. "Lyra?" She nodded again, then pointed to the baby and whispered, "Kyle." Daniel repeated the name slowly. Lyra and Kale. The name sounded strange, yet warm. Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, exhausted. Daniel helped her lie down on the couch and covered her with a blanket. Outside, the colony loudspeakers came alive. "Attention residents of Sector 3, the robotic voice announced. Unidentified life form detected near the perimeter. Remain indoors." Daniel's blood ran cold. They were already searching. He ran to the window. Patrol drones hovered in the distance, scanning every house. If they found Lyra here, it wouldn't just be him who paid the price. The government treated alien contact as a crime, punishable by exile or worse. He turned off all the lights. "Emma, listen to me," he said quietly. "No noise, no light, no movement." Emma nodded, clutching the wooden star tightly. They could hear the low hum of drones moving closer. Lyra opened her eyes weakly. "Hide," she whispered, her voice trembling. Daniel helped her and the baby into the small basement behind the kitchen. He covered the entrance with a rug and some boxes. The sound of engines grew louder, shaking the windows. A beam of red light passed over the house. Daniel held his breath. Emma hid behind the couch, watching the window with wide eyes. A drone stopped right outside, scanning the walls. The machine buzzed as it analyzed heat signatures. Daniel's heart pounded. One mistake and they were finished. Then, after a long, painful moment, the drone beeped and flew away. The lights faded. The sound drifted into the distance. Daniel exhaled slowly, his hands trembling. He moved the boxes aside and opened the basement hatch. Lyra was awake, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "You safe now?" Daniel whispered. She nodded weakly. Then, with a shaking hand, she reached out and touched his arm. "Thank you," she said softly. Her voice was quiet but filled with emotion. Daniel didn't know how to respond. He just nodded, feeling something strange stir inside him. Not fear, not pity, but something like trust. Emma came closer, holding a small blanket. "For the baby," she said shyly. Lyra took it carefully, her eyes shining. Kyle, the little alien baby, reached out with a tiny glowing hand and touched Emma's cheek. Emma giggled quietly. "He's warm." Daniel watched them, realizing how strange and beautiful this moment was, two worlds meeting in silence. And yet somewhere deep inside, he knew this peace wouldn't last. Outside, thunder rolled again. This time it wasn't a storm. It was the sound of engines. Many of them. The search had just begun, and Daniel knew if they found out he was hiding an alien mother and child, they wouldn't just take Lyra, they'd take Emma too, hook ending. Daniel looked at the sleeping alien baby and whispered to himself, "What have I done?" The next morning came quietly. Sunlight tried to sneak through the metal blinds, but the air inside the small house still felt heavy. Daniel sat at the table, staring at his untouched cup of coffee. His hands were trembling slightly. He hadn't slept all night, listening to every sound outside, waiting for the soldiers to knock on the door. But somehow the night had passed without anyone finding them. Down in the basement, the air was cool and still. Lyra and her baby were asleep on an old mattress Daniel had laid down. Emma was sitting beside them, humming softly. She had made a little toy for the baby out of old wires and buttons. When Daniel opened the basement door and looked down, she smiled. "She's okay now," Emma whispered. "She's not scary, Daddy." Daniel smiled weakly, but his mind was full of fear. He knew the patrols would return. He had seen them fly past again before sunrise, searching every sector. If anyone saw Lyra's glowing skin or the baby's green eyes, it would all be over. Still, when he looked at them, sleeping peacefully, he couldn't regret saving them. He had lost his wife during the colony wars. Maybe helping someone else survive made that pain feel less sharp. Lyra woke slowly, blinking as the dim light touched her face. When she saw Daniel, she whispered softly, "You help. Thank you." Her voice still carried that strange melody. Calm and beautiful. Daniel nodded. You need to stay quiet. They're still searching. She nodded back, looking down at her baby. Kyle safe? She whispered. Daniel smiled. Yes, safe. Emma handed her a small bottle of water. Lyra took it carefully, touching Emma's hand for a moment. Her skin felt cool, almost electric. She whispered a few words Daniel didn't understand. It sounded like a blessing. Emma giggled softly. She talks funny. Daniel chuckled too for a moment, forgetting all his fear. But the peace didn't last long. The colony's alert siren started again outside. The metallic voice echoed through the streets. All residents report for inspection. Sector 3. Daniel's heart froze. Inspection meant soldiers would enter every home, checking ID tags, scanning for unauthorized life signs. He turned to Lyra quickly. You need to hide now. He moved fast, covering the basement entrance with boxes and metal sheets. Emma upstairs, he whispered. Act normal. Lyra's glowing eyes watched him as he sealed the trap door. For a second, Daniel saw fear in her face, not just for herself, but for him. Moments later, someone knocked hard on the door. Inspection patrol, open immediately, a rough voice commanded. Daniel took a deep breath and opened the door slowly. 2 soldiers stood outside, wearing gray armor and helmets with red visors. One of them held a scanner, its red light blinking. Routine search, the taller soldier said. Daniel nodded nervously. Of course, come in. They entered the house, their boots heavy against the floor. The scanner beeped softly, scanning every corner. Emma sat on the couch, pretending to play with her toy robot. Daniel's heart pounded with every sound the scanner made. One of the soldiers moved closer to the basement door. He stopped, frowned, and pressed a button on his wrist device. The scanner buzzed louder, red light glowing under the rug. Daniel's stomach twisted. Problem? He asked, trying to sound calm. The soldier looked at him. Heat reading under the floor. Before Daniel could answer, another soldier's radio crackled. Command, we've got movement near the east fence. Copy that. The soldier replied, on our way. They turned quickly and headed for the door. Daniel forced a shaky smile. Guess you've got bigger problems. They didn't reply. They just left, the door slamming behind them. The second the sound faded, Daniel fell to his knees, breathing hard. He moved the rug aside and opened the basement door. Lyra was holding Kale tightly, her eyes wide. It's okay, Daniel whispered. They're gone. Lyra looked at him for a long moment, then said quietly, humans. Dangerous. Daniel nodded. Some of them, yes. She hesitated, then touched her chest. From Halira. Daniel frowned. Halira? That's off the map. She nodded, her eyes distant. Destroyed, she whispered. My people gone. Her words hung in the air like smoke. Emma looked confused. Gone? Like, all gone? Lyra nodded sadly. Fire from sky, machines. No mercy. Daniel understood. Her planet was destroyed. Her ship must have been the last one. And now, she was here. On a world that would treat her as an enemy. Daniel sat beside her, silent for a while. Then he said softly, You're safe here. I promise. Lyra looked at him with tired eyes. You promise. Big word. Daniel smiled faintly. I'll keep it. He didn't know if it was true, but he wanted to believe it. That night, Daniel reinforced the basement wall. He used old metal sheets and broken furniture to make a hidden door. He even rerouted the house's heat pipes so scanners couldn't detect anything below. Emma helped quietly, holding a flashlight. When it was done, Daniel whispered, No one will find you here. Lyra touched his hand again and said softly, You, good man. Outside, the night was calm, but Daniel knew peace like this never lasted long. Somewhere beyond the colony fence, soldiers were still hunting, and now Daniel wasn't just protecting his daughter. He was protecting an alien mother and her child, and that meant danger was coming closer every hour. Hook ending. That night, as Daniel finally lay down to rest, he didn't see the small blinking light on his roof. A tracking drone had found his house. The night on Colony 9 was quiet, too quiet. Even the wind seemed afraid to move. Daniel lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Feeling something wasn't right, a soft hum buzzed faintly outside, like electricity flowing through the air. He sat up quickly, his heart racing. Then he heard it. The metallic sound of boots echoing in the street. Soldiers. He jumped from the bed and looked through the window blinds. Dark shapes were moving between houses, flashlights cutting through the night. A voice shouted from somewhere nearby. No one leaves their home. Search every unit. Daniel's stomach dropped. They were coming. He ran to Emma's room. She was already awake, clutching her toy robot. "Daddy, what's happening?" she whispered. Daniel forced a calm smile. "We just need to stay quiet, okay?" He hurried to the basement. Lyra was sitting up, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. She could sense it too. The danger outside. Soldiers, Daniel whispered. She held her baby tighter. "They find us?" "Not if we stay hidden," he said quickly, pulling away the rug to open the false door. The sound of engines grew louder outside. Through the thin walls, Daniel could hear radios crackling, dogs barking, metal doors slamming. He helped Lyra and Kale crawl into the hidden compartment. "Don't make a sound," he whispered. "No matter what happens." Emma crawled beside them, holding the small blanket over Kale. Daniel closed the wall panel behind them, sealing it perfectly. Then he ran upstairs to make the house look normal. The knock came fast, hard, and angry. "Inspection patrol. Open up now." Daniel opened the door slowly, trying not to look scared. 3 soldiers in gray armor stood there, their helmets reflecting the porch light. Behind them hovered a drone with a scanning beam ready. "Routine check," the leader said, stepping inside without waiting. Daniel nodded. "Of course, go ahead." They moved through the house like shadows. Every sound made Daniel's chest tighten. A chair scraping, a door creaking. The scanner beeped faintly when it passed over the floor above the basement. One soldier frowned, picking up faint energy here. Daniel swallowed hard. "That's just the heater. It's old." The soldier stared at him, his red visor glowing. "Old heaters don't use alien energy signatures," he said coldly. He turned to the other soldier. "Check the lower level." Daniel's pulse exploded in his ears. "No one's allowed in the basement," he said quickly. "Gas leak last week, not safe." The soldier ignored him, stepping toward the hidden door. Daniel's hands shook. He had to think fast. In a desperate move, he reached for the kettle on the stove and spilled the boiling water onto the soldier's scanner. Sparks flew. The man cursed loudly. "What the hell?" "I told you it's leaking down there," Daniel shouted, trying to sound angry instead of terrified. The soldiers backed off for a moment, radioing their commander. But before they could finish, a loud explosion echoed from the far side of the colony. The ground shook, the windows rattled. "What was that?" one of them yelled. "Another crash. East sector," the radio replied. The soldiers turned sharply toward the door. "Stay inside, citizen," the leader ordered. Then they rushed out, their drone following, red lights fading into the distance. The moment the door closed, Daniel's legs gave out. He leaned against the wall, breathing hard. When he finally managed to move, he ran downstairs and opened the basement wall. Lyra and Emma were huddled together, the baby asleep in Emma's lap. "It's over," Daniel whispered. "They're gone." Lyra looked at him with wide, terrified eyes. "You risk life." "For me," Daniel nodded slowly. "You're a mother. I couldn't let them take you." She reached out and touched his hand. Her skin glowed faintly, a soft blue light wrapping around his fingers. For a moment, the pain and fear inside him melted away. Her touch felt warm, peaceful. "Why you help?" she asked softly. "Your law." "Punish," Daniel looked at her, his voice low. "Because no law should stop someone from helping another mother." There was silence between them for a long moment. Then the baby stirred, opening his glowing green eyes. He looked at Daniel and smiled, a small, innocent smile. Emma giggled quietly. He likes you, Daddy. Daniel smiled too. Though his heart still pounded, he sat down beside them. Exhausted but relieved, outside the colony sirens still echoed faintly in the distance. The soldiers were busy searching elsewhere now. But Daniel knew they would come back. Lyra looked down at her baby, then at Daniel. She hesitated before saying, Kale. Special, Daniel frowned. Special? She nodded, touching the baby's tiny hand. Half human, half Hilarion. Daniel's eyes widened. He stared at her, speechless. What do you mean, half human? He asked slowly. Lyra looked at him sadly. Human, man. Helped me escape, loved me. Kale's father. Daniel's mind spun. A human and an alien. Together? Impossible, yet here was proof. Lyra's voice trembled. They hunt us because of him. They fear what we are. Daniel looked at the sleeping baby. At his peaceful face glowing faintly in the dark. And something inside Daniel shifted. This wasn't just about saving lives anymore. This was about protecting truth. Something bigger than both of them. He finally whispered, Then we'll keep him safe. No matter what. Lyra's eyes softened, tears forming. You different human, she whispered. Outside, thunder rolled again, but this time it wasn't the sky. It was engines growing louder. Daniel stood up quickly. He went to the window and froze through the darkness. Dozens of drones were rising again, scanning the colony with red light, and this time, they weren't searching randomly. They were heading straight for his sector. Hook ending. Daniel turned to Lyra and whispered, They know. The raid wasn't over, it was only beginning. The night outside burned with red light. Dozens of drones swept through the sky. Their search beams cutting across the colony. Daniel stood by the window watching in silence, his jaw tight. He knew they were coming for him now. For Lyra, for the baby. For the truth buried in that tiny bundle of light. Down in the basement, Lyra held Kale close to her chest. Her glowing eyes filled with fear. Emma sat beside her, holding the wooden star, whispering softly to calm the baby. Daniel came down the stairs quickly, his face pale. They're searching this sector again, he said. We have to move before sunrise. Lyra looked weak, exhausted from hiding. Where? She asked quietly. They find us anywhere. Daniel took a deep breath. There's an old relay tower in the wasteland, he explained. It's abandoned, but it still has a transmitter. You can use it to send a signal. Lyra's eyes widened, hope flickering for the first time. Signal. Home? She whispered. Daniel nodded. Maybe your people can find you. But before they could leave, Daniel wanted answers. He turned to her and said softly, Lyra, who's really after you? Why risk coming to a human colony? For a moment, Lyra said nothing. She looked down at her baby, her silver skin glowing faintly in the candlelight. Then she spoke, her voice low and trembling. You must know truth. She took a slow breath and began. Many years ago, human ships came to Hilira, she said. They said peace, trade, science. Daniel nodded. It was the same story the government always told. But Lyra's next words made his stomach twist. They lie, she whispered. They take our children, test them, change them. Daniel froze. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. You mean experiments? He asked. Lyra nodded, tears shining in her eyes. Your soldiers destroy our world to hide truth, she said bitterly. But one human, one good man helped me escape. She looked at Kale with trembling hands. He saved me, loved me, she whispered softly. He is Kale's father. Daniel's eyes widened. It suddenly made sense. The strange human energy reading the soldiers had detected. The baby wasn't just alien, he was something new. Something both worlds feared. Your people call it forbidden, Lyra continued, her voice breaking. Half human, half Hilarion, not allowed to live. Daniel felt his chest tighten. So that was why they were being hunted. Not because of what they did, but because of what Kale was. Emma looked at Lyra with wide eyes. But he's just a baby, she said softly. He didn't do anything wrong, Lyra smiled sadly. To some, his life is danger. Daniel clenched his fists, anger burning in his chest. He remembered the lies the government broadcasted. Stories of peace, cooperation, safety. But the truth was darker than he ever imagined. Lyra continued. They want him back. To finish what they start. Her voice trembled. They fear he grow strong. Daniel stared at the small sleeping child. Kale's skin shimmered faint blue under the dim light. Even in his sleep, he glowed like a living star. Daniel whispered, "He's not dangerous. He's a miracle." The room went silent for a moment. Only the hum of the generator filled the air. Then Daniel stood up suddenly. "We can't hide anymore," he said firmly. "They'll tear this colony apart to find you. We need to move now." Lyra looked at him uncertain. "You sure? You have child," she whispered. Daniel looked at Emma, then back at her. "I lost too many people already," he said quietly. "I won't lose anyone else." He packed food, water, and an old fuel cell into a small bag. Outside, the night glowed red from drone lights. He waited until they passed before leading them out through the back tunnel. Lyra held Kale close, her silver skin hidden under a thick coat. Emma walked quietly beside them, clutching her father's hand. They moved through the ruins at the edge of the colony. The wind howled through broken buildings. Every shadow looked like danger. Every sound made Daniel's heart jump. He knew patrols could appear at any moment. But the relay tower was close, just a few miles across the dark wasteland. As they walked, Lyra spoke softly. "Kale, not just child," she whispered. "He can heal. He can sense life." Daniel looked at her, surprised. "Like powers?" She nodded. "Maybe, but he too small yet." She looked down at Kale. "He is bridge between worlds." Daniel thought for a moment, then said, "Maybe that's what scares them, that we could understand each other." The cold wind cut through their clothes. Emma shivered and Lyra placed a glowing hand on her shoulder. Warmth spread instantly through the air. Emma looked up in awe. "That feels nice." Lyra smiled faintly. Gift from Kale's blood. Daniel saw it too. The faint light that shimmered whenever Lyra touched someone. She wasn't just surviving, she was protecting them. They finally reached the edge of the wasteland. In the distance, the relay tower stood tall. Dark against the red horizon, Daniel pointed toward it. "That's our way out." But before they could move closer, a loud metallic roar echoed behind them. They turned around. 3 drones appeared over the ridge, scanning lights sweeping across the ground. Lyra gasped, clutching Kale tight. Daniel pulled out his old rifle. He whispered, "Run to the tower, I'll hold them off." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "No," she whispered, "you can't fight them." Daniel smiled faintly. "You said Kale is a bridge, maybe it's time someone built it." The drones fired their lights toward them. The air filled with heat and noise. Daniel shouted, "Go!" Lyra ran toward the tower, Emma beside her. The baby glowing in her arms, Daniel stayed behind, firing at the drones, buying them time. For every drone that fell, 2 more appeared. He knew he couldn't win, but he didn't care. He just needed to protect them long enough. Hook ending. As Lyra reached the tower, she turned back and saw Daniel fall to his knees. His last words echoed through the wasteland. "Get him to the signal. Save him." The desert wind howled like a wounded animal. Dust and smoke danced under the blood-red sky. Lyra ran across the wasteland. Her arms clutching baby Kale tight against her chest, Emma struggled to keep up. Her small legs sinking into the soft sand behind them. Flashes of blue light tore through the darkness. The soldiers were closing in. Their drones screamed overhead, searching, hunting. Every second felt like the end. Lyra looked back once and her heart twisted. Daniel was still behind, half hidden in the smoke, firing his rifle again and again. The air around him glowed with laser light. He was fighting like a man who had nothing left to lose, but she could see his strength fading. Each shot slower, weaker. She wanted to turn back, but she couldn't. Kale's safety came first. Tears blurred her glowing eyes. "Run," Daniel had said. So she ran. The relay tower stood in the distance like a dark skeleton against the stars. Its metal frame cracked and old, but still reaching toward the sky. Lyra knew it was their only hope. If she could reach the control core, she could send a signal across the stars. Maybe her people would hear. Maybe rescue would come. Maybe Emma tripped and fell on the rocky ground. Lyra stopped instantly, pulling her up. "You okay?" she whispered. Emma nodded, though tears streaked her dusty face. "I'm fine," she said bravely, but her small hand shook. Lyra placed her palm over Emma's heart. Her touch glowed softly. "Courage," she whispered in her alien tongue. The fear in Emma's eyes faded a little, replaced by quiet strength. "Let's go," the girl said, and they ran again. The ground shook behind them. Daniel was still fighting. But then came a deep explosion that tore through the night. Emma gasped. "Daddy!" Lyra turned. A plume of fire rose into the air where Daniel had been. Her chest tightened. For a second she wanted to scream. But she knew what he had done. He had bought them time. She whispered through tears, "Thank you." "Daniel." The tower loomed closer now. Old metal stairs wound upward like a rusted spiral. Lyra pushed Emma ahead. "Climb quick," she said. Emma nodded and began climbing, gripping the rails tight. Lyra followed, holding Cale with one arm. Every step echoed. Every breath burned. Below them shadows moved, soldiers spreading out. Surrounding the base, their voices crackled through radios. "Target located, repeat, target located." They reached the top, where the wind screamed through the broken walls. The old transmitter sat in the center, half covered with sand and wires. Lyra placed Cale down gently and began touching the panel. Her fingertips glowed, sending lines of blue light into the machine. The system flickered to life, old screens glowing with alien symbols. Emma stared in awe. "You can make it work?" Lyra nodded weakly. "I hope." Suddenly, a gunshot echoed. A metal beam above them shattered. Raining sparks, Lyra ducked, pulling Emma close. The soldiers were climbing the tower. Weapons ready, they had minutes, maybe less. Lyra pressed her hand harder on the console. The panel responded, showing a glowing symbol of a star in a spiral. She whispered rapidly in her native tongue. "Come on. Come on." The signal began to build, a beam of pure light forming above the tower. It rose into the sky like a glowing pillar. Emma stared. "Is that the signal?" Lyra nodded, tears in her eyes. "It will reach them," she whispered. "They will come." But before they could celebrate, the tower shook violently. One of the soldiers fired a rocket into the base. The whole structure groaned, metal twisting under the force. Emma screamed as the floor cracked beneath her. Lyra grabbed her hand, pulling her back just in time. "Hold on." Below, soldiers shouted orders. "Bring the baby alive." Lyra's heart pounded. Cale whimpered softly, glowing brighter with every sound. The light from his small body spread across the tower. "Cale, no," Lyra whispered. "You're too young." But the baby's light grew stronger. It wrapped around her and Emma like a shield. When the soldiers fired again, the bullets melted in midair. Emma's eyes widened. "He's protecting us." Lyra stared in awe, tears on her cheeks. Her baby, their miracle, was fighting back. The soldiers hesitated, blinded by the glow. Lyra knew this was her only chance. She turned to Emma, her voice shaking. "When the light stops, you run, promise me." Emma shook her head. "No, I'm not leaving you." Lyra smiled faintly, brushing her hair away. "You strong like your father," she whispered. "But now you must live." She turned back to the console, her energy fading fast. She used the last of her strength to amplify the signal. Blue light filled the sky, reaching far beyond the clouds. Then, just as her body gave out, a deep rumble echoed above. Through the thick storm clouds, a massive ship appeared. Sleek, glowing, silent. Emma gasped. "Is that your people?" Lyra nodded weakly, her voice barely a whisper. "They heard us." The soldiers below froze, their weapons dropping as the alien ship descended. Its engines roared like thunder, shaking the ground. A beam of light surrounded the tower, wrapping Lyra, Emma, and Cale in its glow. Emma covered her eyes, the light too bright to see. Then suddenly everything went silent. The next thing she knew, she was standing inside a room filled with silver light. Daniel was there, lying on a table, his body wrapped in glowing bands of energy. He looked peaceful, alive. Lyra stood beside him, holding Cale. Emma ran to her father and cried, "Daddy." Daniel opened his eyes weakly, smiling through tears. "You made it," he whispered. Lyra looked at him with gratitude deeper than words. "You save us," she said softly, "and now we save you." The alien ship rose higher, leaving the burning colony behind below. The soldiers could only watch as the light faded into the clouds. Hook ending. As Daniel closed his eyes, Cale's small hand touched his chest. A wave of warmth spread through him, healing his wounds, and for the first time in years, Daniel whispered with a faint smile, "Home. Maybe it's not a place, maybe it's the people we choose." The stars outside the window shone brighter than ever. Daniel opened his eyes slowly, feeling the soft hum of the alien ship around him. For a moment he thought he was dreaming. The air was warm, glowing faintly blue. He could breathe again, the pain in his chest was gone. He looked down and saw small glowing symbols moving across his skin. Healing energy. Cale's hand rested over his heart. Shining softly, Daniel smiled weakly. "You saved me, little one." Lyra stood beside him, her silver skin brighter than before. Her eyes glowed with peace, no longer filled with fear. Emma was asleep in a soft bed near them, clutching the wooden star in her hand. For the first time in days, she looked safe. Lyra placed a gentle hand on Daniel's shoulder. "You live," she said softly. Daniel smiled. "Thanks to you." Lyra shook her head slowly. "No thanks to your gift," Daniel frowned. "My gift?" Lyra nodded and looked toward Cale. "Your courage gave him strength," she said. "He saved you because you believed in him." Daniel looked at the baby, who now smiled and blinked with bright green eyes, half human, half Hillyrian. A child born from two worlds that once hated each other. But now this little life had changed everything. The ship moved silently through the clouds of Colony 9. Below them, the colony lights flickered like dying stars. Soldiers ran helplessly, watching the ship vanish beyond the storm. They could not follow, they could not stop it. For once, the hunters were powerless. Lyra guided Daniel toward the central chamber of the ship. It was vast, glowing with light and filled with strange floating crystals. "Where are we going?" Daniel asked, still weak but curious. Lyra smiled faintly. "Home," she said. "But not mine, ours." Her words echoed softly. Filled with meaning Daniel didn't yet understand. A group of tall Hillyrians waited inside the chamber. Their eyes shone like liquid silver. One of them stepped forward and bowed to Daniel. "You protected our queen and her child," he said. "We owe you a life debt," Daniel blinked, stunned. "Queen?" He turned to Lyra in surprise. She looked down shyly. "I hide truth," she admitted. "To keep Cale safe." Daniel laughed softly, shaking his head. "So I rescued an alien queen on my birthday?" Lyra smiled. "A strange gift," Daniel chuckled. "Best one I've ever had." The elder Hillyrian approached Cale and touched his forehead. "The child carries both light and earth," he said solemnly. "He is proof that our worlds can unite," Lyra nodded. "He will grow strong, wise, kind." She looked at Daniel, her voice trembling. "And he will know your name." Daniel felt his heart ache. He understood what she meant. They couldn't stay together. He looked at Emma, sleeping peacefully. "She'll be heartbroken when she wakes," he said quietly. Lyra stepped closer, her hand glowing softly. "I can help her remember with peace," she said gently. "Not sadness." Daniel hesitated, then nodded. He looked at her with deep gratitude. "You've already given me more than I can ever repay," he said. The ship's lights dimmed as they entered the outer orbit. Through the large glass window, Daniel could see the stars stretching endlessly. Colony 9 looked small now, just a blue light among millions. He realized how tiny their world truly was, how much there was beyond fear and war. Maybe this was what humanity had forgotten. Maybe this was what they needed to see. Lyra turned to him one last time. "Daniel," she said softly, "when Kyle grows, he will seek your world." "Why?" Daniel asked. "Because he will carry both sides within him," she whispered. "He will be the bridge you dreamed of." Daniel smiled sadly. "I hope the world is ready for him." Lyra nodded. "It will be. Because of you." She lifted her hand and a small crystal floated toward Daniel. It glowed with a soft white light. "This will guide you when you need us," she said. "It carries a part of our light and a part of Cale's heart." Daniel took it gently, feeling warmth spread through his fingers. "Thank you," he said quietly. Lyra smiled, her eyes full of emotion. "No thank you, human father," she whispered. The ship descended slowly toward the edge of the colony's safe zone. A beam of light surrounded Daniel and Emma. Lyra stepped forward and touched his hand one last time. "Goodbye, Daniel," she said. "You gave up your birthday to save a mother, and you saved two worlds." Daniel wanted to speak, but his throat tightened. He simply nodded, holding her gaze as the light brightened. In an instant, the beam lowered them gently to the ground outside the colony fence. The wind was soft, the stars shining above like candles. Daniel looked up just in time to see the alien ship vanish into the sky. A trail of silver light faded into the clouds. Emma stirred in his arms, waking slowly. "Daddy," she whispered sleepily, "where's Lyra?" Daniel smiled softly, brushing her hair aside. "She's gone home," he said, "but she left us a gift." He held up the glowing crystal. It shimmered like a living star, pulsing with warmth. Emma reached out and touched it, smiling. "It feels like Kyle," she whispered. Daniel nodded, tears in his eyes. "Maybe it is." he said quietly. They walked back toward the colony, the sky slowly brightening. The fires from the raid had faded, and the air was calm again. For the first time in a long while, Daniel felt peace. He had saved more than just lives. He had saved hope. When they reached their small home, the candle on the table was still burning. The little wooden star lay beside it, waiting. Daniel sat down, holding the crystal in one hand and the star in the other. He smiled faintly and whispered, "Best birthday ever." Above them, far beyond the clouds, a faint voice echoed through the stars. "Thank you, human."